Namaskar everybody and welcome to the Gita Satsang for today. Let us start with the Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnaya Vasudevaya Haraye Paramatmane Pranatah Kleshanashaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namostu Te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Ullara Vindaya Tapatra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Ramanujadayapatram Jnanavairagyabhushanam Srimad-Venkatanathāryam Vande Vedantadeshikam Yo Nityamachyutapadambujayugmarugma Vyamohatastaditarani Trinaya Mene Asmadgurorбхагаватosya Dayaikasindhoho Ramanujasya Charanau Sharanam Prapadye. So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us start with our satsang topic for today. So in the last satsang, we had taken up to the 27th shloka, and we had seen how in those previous shlokas, Krishna has been describing about different types of yogis. What are the different types of yoga, karma yoga that somebody can perform. So now we'll take up the next 4 shlokas, where again he's going to describe some more types of yogis. So in that, we will start with the 28th shloka now. So in that Krishna says, Dravya yagnyas-tapo yagnya, yoga yagnyas-tatha pare, swadhyaya jnana yagnyascha, yatayah samshitavrataha. Some people offer dravya, they offer their wealth, they offer material things as yagnya, as sacrifice, while others offer tapas, severe austerities as sacrifice. Some people follow the eightfold path of yogic practices, and yet others study the scriptures, and some people cultivate knowledge as sacrifice while observing strict vows. So here Krishna is talking about many different types of yogis. So here specifically in this verse, he is talking about 5 types of yogis. So who are these 5 types of yogis? What are the 5 types of yajna which are described here? So the first type is called as dravya yajna. So as we know, the meaning of the word dravya means some item, some material object, right? Something is offered as yajna. So when we are going to offer some materials, it means we are using up our wealth in that. So people make different kinds of offering. Now, whether it is these offerings are made into a sacrificial fire, into the homa, or during the course of certain puja, or as a part of charity to others, dana, right? Whatever, it encompasses all these activities. So people offer clothes, some people offer food, they do annadana, vastradana. Then sometimes people, you must have seen in summer seasons, some people keep pots of water so that anybody who wants can come and drink. Some people will keep water in a small vessel for birds to drink. Some people offer what is that, majge, buttermilk in the summer, or like as part of whatever vrata they have taken, people may do different types of yajnas, different types of offerings. So somebody who does this is called, it is said that he is performing dravya yajna. Now, one important thing to remember is that these offerings must be made with, we are going to use up our money for that, right? For our wealth will be used up in this. Now, we must make sure that the wealth we are using for doing this dravya yajna has been accumulated by righteous means only. Only by following the dharmic path, whatever money we have earned, that when we offer it as dravya yajna, then it will be of benefit to us. There are many people who have this wrong idea like maybe sometimes it is their guilty conscience. You may have heard of some people who are making very big offerings to the hundi at Tirupati. Now, in some cases, we may find that there are people who have gained wealth by unholy means. And then they think that by going and putting it into the hundi at Tirupati, whatever they have done, they will overcome the negative effects of that. So, although they stand to benefit because of offering something, but if that offering is made with this attitude that, oh, I want to overcome this papa, or as prayaschitta, or I'm trying to bribe god, that don't write my account, all that will not work. That's a very wrong idea that sometimes people may have. Just a minute, please. Okay, so we must be sure that when we make these offerings, we must do them with wealth which has been earned by righteous means. Okay. Now, the next thing, when we do some charity, many times we make offerings, and especially in case of, places where you are not actually thinking of it as yajna, but you are doing that. Like, for example, people celebrate weddings. Now, we've seen that over the years, how these weddings have all become so lavish and extravagant, isn't it? So, now in a wedding, also, we are serving food to people. So, it is one type of annadana that we are doing. But the people to whom we are serving this food, they are people who already have lots. They are our relatives, right? So instead of just offering to those who already have a lot, there is more benefit, there is more good going to come out of our act if we do charity to those who are genuinely in need, to those who don't have food to eat. So these few things we must keep in mind whenever we are doing some form of dravya yajna, any kind of charity. The second type of yajna that Krishna is talking about is tapo yajna. Tapo yajna is any kind of tapas, some rigorous penance that somebody does. Now, what is happening during this type of a yajna? It is something which is going to test how much limit, how much, discomfort that physical body can take. Like we have heard in the past of how these, even the asuras, even the rakshasas, they used to go and perform different kinds of tapas, and we've heard of the descriptions of those, right? They would stand on one leg, they would stand on the toes of their feet for many years like that. So anything where your physical body is tested to exceed its limits, that kind of yajna is called as tapo yajna. Then the other type is called yoga yajna. So here what is referred to by saying yoga yajna is activities like going for tirtha yatra, bathing in holy rivers, and so on. Now, here again, what happens when we go to a tirtha yatra, we go to a tirtha kshetra, we go on a pilgrimage. What is supposed to happen? We are getting darshan of the divine form of the Lord in different places. So that gives us benefits. At the same time, most of these tirtha sthalas, they are located on the banks of some holy rivers. So when we bathe in those holy rivers also, our papa gets washed away. We get the benefit, we get that punya, we get those good benefits from there. Now, here again, we must understand, in the past, right, people used to travel, and it was very difficult. There were no, what you say, amenities. There were no comforts in the course of a tirtha yatra, right? You had to struggle. You had to go somehow. Many times, people in the very long, long ago, when there was no proper means of transport, also there was actually no guarantee that people would come back alive. After finishing the tirtha yatra. So that it was very difficult. So when you go to a tirtha yatra also, it is some kind of tapas only that you are doing, right? Because you are having some lot of discomfort, and you are sacrificing your comfort, and you are doing that yajna. Nowadays, what has happened, unfortunately, is that thanks to all the modern resources and amenities that we have, people start looking for comfort even on a Tirtha Yatra. Many times people go for Tirtha Yatra as if they are going for a picnic, right? And even if there is a conducted tour which is going, then there are a lot of demands that people have. Those yatris who are going in that conducted tour, they have a lot of demands with regard to the type of food that they eat, what is being served in the food, why this is not served, why this is not done, why there is no AC room provided, why we are being given a dormitory to stay, why we are not given separate rooms, why there is why there is a common bathroom, why there is no attached bathroom, all such kinds of things. Then if we are going to have these kind of complaints and we are going to Tirtha Yatra only seeking comfort there, or for a change, or change from our daily routine and such kind of attitudes, then it will not become part of yoga yajna, right? So we need to take care of all these things also. Similarly, when we bathe in the holy rivers, now it is told that when you take bath in the rivers, we should not be using soap and such other things which will pollute that water. So all these things we have to take care of when we do these activities. So this, going to Tirtha Yatra, bathing in the holy rivers, all this is a part of what is called as yoga yajna. Then the next type of yajna which the Lord describes is called Swadhyaya Yajna. So in the Swadhyaya Yajna, it is Vedadhyayanam, that is study of the Vedas, not just the Vedas, all the scriptures. That study of that, spending time and giving all your attention to that study is called Swadhyaya Yajna. And then whatever, just merely studying is not enough, but we need to apply that knowledge. We need to cultivate that knowledge in our life. We need to lead our life as prescribed by these teachings of the scriptures. That somebody who does that, it is said that they are performing Jnana Yajna. So these are the 5 types of yajnas and the 5 types of yogis which Lord has described in this shloka. First is Dravya Yajna. Then there is Tapo Yajna, the second one. Then there is Yoga Yajna. Then there is Swadhyaya Yajna. And there is Jnana Yajna. So Krishna is saying that some people of for their wealth, some people do tapas, some people follow yoga yajna, some people study the scriptures, and some people cultivate that knowledge. And for doing all this, they do it while they are observing strict vows. That means whatever is told in the Shastra to be done as part of all these activities, they are doing it in a strict way, not making allowances, not saying, okay, this is an exception this time, not doing like that, not taking shortcuts, but doing all these things as prescribed by the Shastras. So there are people who do all this, and they are all belonging to the category of Karma Yogis. Okay. Now we'll move on to the next shloka. Now this 29th and 30th shlokas are kind of related. So we've taken them together. Okay. So in the 29th shloka and 30th shloka, Krishna is saying, Apane juhvati pranam, pranopanam tatha pare, pranapana gatiruddhva, pranayama parayanaha, apare niyataharaha, pranan praneshu juhvati, sarvepyete yajnavido, yajnakshapita kalmashaha. So here Krishna is talking about the particular activity which is called as pranayama. So he is talking about yogis who follow this path. Still others, other types of yogis, offer as sacrifice the outgoing breath in the incoming breath, while some offer the incoming breath into the outgoing breath. We'll see what this means later. Some arduously, with great difficulty, practice pranayama and restrain the incoming and outgoing breaths, purely absorbed in the regulation of the life energy. Life energy is prana. So they are regulating that prana, and that is their tapas, that is their yoga, yajna. Yet others curtail their food intake and offer the breath into the life energy as a sacrifice. All such people, all these knowers of sacrifice, all people who perform these activities are cleansed of their impurities as a result of such performances. So here, Lord is describing that there are different ways in which people do pranayama. So in that different ways, whichever way somebody follows, they will be cleansed of the impurities if they are doing this as their yajna. Now, whenever we need not go into the details of pranayama here because there is a lot of information available everywhere about this. But basically, there are 3 phases in this pranayama, which is a breathing method. So There is a phase of inhalation, there is a phase of holding the breath, and there is a phase of exhalation, right? So it is told that when we breathe in, when we inhale, the air moves inwards very fast. Now, at the same time, inside our body, there are what are called as pancha yagna, pancha pranas. There are five different forms of prana which are there in us. They are called as prana, samana, udana, apana, vyana. Like this, there are five different vayus within us. Now, what happens is, 1 minute. Now, what happens is that whenever these movements, now when we are in the process of breathing air in, the pranavayu is in the position of rising upwards near the heart region. So, because at the same time we are breathing in external air, that pranavayu is stopped there and it is made to move downwards instead of moving upwards. Then, in the middle part of our body, in the stomach region, there is apana vayu which is moving downwards. So already that has been moving downward. This pranaya vayu is also forced to go downward. So this is offered into that. Now all this occurs during the process of inhalation of breath, and this phase is called as the puraka phase. Now what happens next? After some time we exhale. So when we are exhaling, that apana vayu which was moving downwards, now it starts moving upwards and it is offered into the pranavayu. Now this phase of exhalation is called rechaka. And then there is a phase called the kumbhaka phase, which comes actually between these two phases. So in that, the movements of the pranavayu and apanavayu are completely stopped. That is the time when we have held our breath, right? So these are the three phases of pranayama. So somebody who practices any of these, like you may have heard of people doing pranayama where some people focus mainly on slow inhalation. There are some people who focus mainly on slow exhalation. There are some people who focus on holding the breath for a long time, right? Similarly, there are different ways in which this breath, you can breathe in and out of one nostril, you can breathe into one nostril, out the other nostril. There are different aspects of that. So it is not our job here to go into the details of that. But anybody who practices, the simple thing we need to understand is anybody who is involved with practice of pranayama, right? Such a person is performing one type of yajna. So he is also a karma yogi. Okay. Then the other type of karma yogi is somebody who curbs the intake of food. They curtail their food intake. They are very particular about what food they are taking in. Is it something which is prescribed in the Shastras? Is it in the manner as prescribed in the Shastras? Is it eaten at the time which is prescribed by the Shastras? It is, am I making sure that I'm not eating at the times where the Shastra prohibits it to be eaten? Am I following Ekadashi Vrata, Dwadashi Vrata, everything correctly? So all these things, people who do this, right, they take care, they put restrictions on how much food they are taking, and simultaneously they also do pranayama. These type of people are also performing one type of karma yoga. So all these are different types of yogis. Now, what Krishna is trying to say here is, right from the, say, the 24th, 25th shloka, if we see, Krishna has been describing all these different types of yajna. I think if we count and see, there may be some 12 or 13 types there. So all these types of actions, when they are performed, all these types of yajna, which are done, all our nitya karma, naimitya karma that we are performing, right? People who do this with the right spirit as prescribed in the Shastras, they get totally cleansed of any impurity that will be there in them. So, what are these methods? Just to recap, the first thing we talked about is offering puja, doing Vigraha puja. Then offering homa in the Agni. Then keeping our mind away, keeping ourselves away from sense objects, or being in the middle of sense objects but being able to control the senses. Then control of the mind. Then today, whatever we have discussed, Dravya Yagnya, Tapo Yagnya, Yoga Yagnya, Swadhyaya Yagnya, Jnana Yagnya, Pranayama, right? Food control, Pranayama along with that. All these are equal in their ability to take away the papa and punya account of a person. They will make the person get totally cleansed of impurities. Now, one thing we need to remember here is we are saying they are taking away the papa and punya. Now, we can understand this taking away of papa. It is something which is definitely desirable. Now, you may wonder that why should the punya also get taken away? And when we say that when we do good things, then we accumulate punya. Then how can they get taken away? In the normal course of events, if I am doing a lot of dana, if I am doing certain activities for the benefit of other people, if I am doing good deeds, yes, I will get punyas. If I'm doing bad, I will get papas. Now, when we are talking about people who are doing all these forms of yoga, right, all these forms of yajna, what we are saying, they are only good things that they are doing, right? So along with giving them punya, it will take away their papa. Now, but for the person who is looking for moksha, he doesn't want punya either, isn't it? So when will that happen? When will there be no punya attaching to that person? Because he wants to do good, but he does not want the merit which is coming from doing that good. Because even if you do accumulate a lot of punyas, you have to go, you will go to Swarga. And after that, you have to again come to Bhuloka and finish your more account, and then only you can get moksha. You will not get moksha by being in Swarga, isn't it? So we don't want punya either, because even punya is a bondage. So what should be done? Whenever we are doing all these yajnas, it is important to do it with the bhava that I am not the doer, the Lord is getting it done through me. I am doing this for the pleasure of the Lord. I am doing this because if at all any phala is coming to me, let it be that it will take me closer to moksha without any desire for an inferior phala, without believing that I am the doer. When we do these actions, then it ensures that even punya doesn't come and get attached to us, right? So all these methods which have been described in all these few shlokas here, the five or six shlokas here, the Lord is saying that by doing any of these, a person can go ahead on the spiritual path. Now, when we are doing any of these yajnas, again, when it will give this kind of a benefit, only if we follow all other, we have to do these practices as it is told in Shastra. But along with that, we have to also do these activities along with all the normal other practices which are told in Shastra. Like, for example, here the commentators give us an example that suppose I am a person that I am very rigorous in my practice of pranayama. Okay, I do that with great effort and with great concentration, following all the rules perfectly, everything. But then, for my parents, I am not doing the whatever is the prescribed Shraddha karma. Once every year, I have to perform Shraddha for my parents. If I am not doing that, is that right? I will not get any benefit, because it's like you have to do whatever is told as per your ashrama and varna. If you are a grihastha ashrami, you have to do whatever role is given to you there, whatever duties are prescribed there. If you are belonging to Kshatriya Varna, whatever Varna you may be, you have to follow all those practices which are told for you, right? So, without doing that basic thing, if I do all these other methods, I will not get any benefit. So it is very, very, very important that we should perform these yajnas without giving up all the other practices which are told in the Shastra. Then only it will become equal to Karma Yoga. Otherwise, it will be just karma. It will be only actions that you are doing. It will not be a means to take you further towards the Lord. Right? Okay, that is something we need to keep in mind. Now we go to the 31st shloka. So here Krishna is talking about yet another kind of uh, yajna that people can do. So he says, Yajna shishta mrita bhujo yanti brahma sanatanam nayam lokostya yajnasya kutonyah kurusattama. Those who know the secret of yajna, the secret of sacrifice, and engaging in it, they partake of the remnants of that yajna that are like nectar, that is amrita. Whatever is left over after the yajna is amrita. So those who know this secret of the sacrifice and do the yajna and then take whatever is left out of that, considering it to be nectar, such people advance towards the absolute truth. O Kurusattama, O best of the Kurus, because Arjuna is also one of the Kuru clan, right? So, O best of the Kurus, O Arjuna, those who perform no sacrifice find no happiness, either in this world or the next. Now, there are two aspects that Krishna is talking about here. In the first half of the shloka, he is talking about how people who do this yajna, what should be their attitude if they want to progress ahead. And then he's telling that if they don't do that, what happens to them, right? So people, all people who do these yajnas, they will get the benefits of Atma Sakshatkara. They will destroy all their papa punya, provided they do it with awareness that they are doing it for the pleasure of the Lord. Now, how do these people consume whatever they are consuming for their subsistence? Whatever is left after performance of the respective yajna, they will only consume that. Or whatever is permitted as per the path of yajna which they are following, whatever is permitted for them to consume after that yajna that they have done. So only the remnants left behind after the offering has been made, only that they consume. Like if there is somebody who is doing a homa, then what he will do the homa, whatever he has to offer, he will offer to the Lord in that. And that prasada, which once it has been offered, then only he is going to eat. Similarly, we every day, whatever food we are cooking, we say that we have to offer it to the Lord and only then we have to consume. Right? Now, if I'm somebody who is following the path that I am going to indulge in control of the mind or control of the senses. Now, what I should do, what is my consumption going to be? So, whatever is going to take me away from the Lord, I stop consuming those kinds of things from all my senses. I don't listen to such kind of things. I don't see such kind of things, right? Only what is permitted for me. Because my objective is that by controlling my senses, I'm going to go forward on the spiritual path. So, like this, it is important to consume only that which is permitted or something which is the remnant left over after performing of the yajna. So such people, right? Such people who do this, for them, that remnant, whatever they are consuming, will be like nectar. It is amrita for them. And that only such people advance towards the absolute truth. So they go ahead on the spiritual path. They will get closer to Atma Sakshatkara. But what about people who are not doing any of this? Ayagnyasya, those who don't do any form of yajna, those who are living, who have got a human birth, but are living just like mere animals without any kind of activity which can be coming under any of these categories of yajna. For such people, they don't get any benefit either in this world or they don't get mukti to go to the next world also. So we have heard people talking about the four purusharthas, isn't it? Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Now, moksha is something which will take us to the next world. We get mukti from this world and we proceed to Sri Vaikunta. That is for benefit in the other world. What about this dharma, artha, kama? They are things which are going to give us benefits or which will come to us if we do everything correctly. We have to achieve these things, these objectives, these purusharthas in this world. Now, if there is somebody who does not do any form of yajna, they will not get anything beneficial through this dharma, artha, kama also. They will not be able to enjoy any benefits, any good things in this world also, nor they get mukti to proceed to the next world, right? Now, there is also this concept that we have to perform yajna, at least what is called as the Panchamaha Yajna, because every day, whatever activities we do, we occur some or the other dosha because of the very nature of those activities. If I'm sweeping the floor, if I'm grinding something, if I'm lighting the fire to cook, right? If I'm collecting water in a vessel, any of even these simplest of activities, small, many organisms get destroyed. Now, that is something that I just can't avoid, isn't it? There is no way that I can prevent those organisms from being killed. But I'm doing it because I have to do it for my sustenance. Now, okay, I'm cooking food. I'm going to offer it as prasada to the Lord. But in the process of cooking that prasada, also, what is happening? All these things are coming, isn't it? So I will get doshas. And that is why to overcome these kind of doshas, which everybody is bound to incur, it is told that we must do these panchayagnyas. Brahma Yajna, or sometimes they may call it as Veda Yajna, Deva Yajna, Pitra Yajna, Bhuta Yajna, Manusha Yajna, all these making some kind of offerings. By Brahma Yajna is study of the Vedas, study of the Shastras, whatever is prescribed for you as per your Varna and Ashrama. Deva Yajna is to do homa, yaga, to make offerings to the deities who have blessed you with so much. Then Pitra Yajna is for the ancestral souls, for their further sadgati. Bhuta Yajna is for all living beings. We have to offer something for their upkeep. And Manusha Yajna is what is done for helping other people around us who are in need of help. So all these things we must keep doing. If there is somebody who does not do this also, it's a problem. At the same time, they don't do this, and then they don't even do any of the other yajnas, all those 12, 13 categories that Krishna has described here. Then for such people, there is no benefit that they get in this world, nor they get mukti to proceed to the next world. So Krishna has very clearly laid down that what is it that it is a person has to do when he's, in this path of doing karma and making it into karma yoga. So for us, what is it that we should do now? Now we may choose any of these things, which is uh, like what you say, easy for us to do, or which is convenient for us to do. Whatever form of yajna you can do that. If you can do more than one, yes, definitely do it. But make sure that you're doing it as prescribed. Second thing, do it along with doing all your other nitya and naimittika karmas. Don't give up that and only do this and think that you will get benefited by it, right? Then, most importantly, do with bhava, right? Don't do anything mechanically, whether it is study of the Shastras, whether it is adopting the teachings of Shastras in your life, whether it is doing a homa, whether it is offering puja to the Lord, whatever, whether it is doing dana, charity, anything, whichever mode you are using, do it with love for the Lord. Do it with the bhava that I'm doing this for the pleasure of the Lord, right? Don't just do it mechanically. Then you will get the maximum benefit. So I heard the other day somebody talking about how what it means to be spiritual. Like nowadays, unfortunately, there is this whole idea, many people say, I am spiritual, but I'm not ritualistic. I don't do rituals. I'm not religious like that. Now, it is important that the very meaning of that word spiritual, right? If you look at it that way, you do your rituals with spirit. You do the karma part with the right bhava. Then it becomes spiritual. We have very little time left. Anyway, I will just quickly remind you of the story of Karma Bai that we have seen in some previous satsang. There was this child called Karma Bai. Her father was a big devotee of Srinath Ji in Rajasthan. And always he used to offer bhog, offer prasad to the Lord in the morning, first thing. I mean, as part of the worship, and then only he would eat anything. So once he had to go out of town. So he told his Karma Bai, she was a small 6, 7 year old girl. He told her, see, I am not going to be there. So you have to make the prasad and offer it to the Lord. So she took it so seriously. And next morning, her father left and went. Then she, as soon as she woke up, she immediately started making all this thing. And he had told her, you make khichdi. So he had taught her that. So she got up quickly, she made the khichdi and she kept it for the Lord. And she's waiting that, okay, now Krishna will come and eat that. He didn't come. She was so sad and so upset. She waited till the end of the day and then she's crying, and she's complaining to Krishna, why you didn't come? My dad so told that you will come and so on. So feeling pity on her, Krishna came and he actually ate it. So then from every day she started doing the same thing. Her father came back after 1 week or so and she told him that and that day he came somewhere in the afternoon or something. So he said, okay, where is that prasad which you offered to God? Come bring it. She said, no, Krishna ate everything. He thought she's lying. He said, what is this? You are telling lies. How will Krishna eat everything? Because when he was doing it, Krishna wouldn't come and eat, right? So then she said, no, no, we'll see tomorrow. You just wait and see. So he hid somewhere. And then when she offered, actually Krishna came and ate and he saw that with his own eyes. So it was so great, her bhava, that he came there and actually ate it. Now this same lady later in her old age, she went off to Odisha, to Jagannath Puri. And there the Lord Jagannath used to come to her house every day and eat that khichdi of hers. It was called Karma Bai khichdi. He used to eat that and then only he would go and consume whatever chapan bhog they are offering him, those 56 different forms of prasada that they offer in that temple. Right. Now, one day what happened, there was a priest of that temple who came to this Karma Bai's house, and he started seeing that, oh, what is this woman doing? She's not taking bath. She has not cleaned the vessels. She's not purified the kitchen and the, fire. And what is this she's doing? Simply, she's getting up, she's making and offering it to the Lord. So he told her, see, you should not do like this. You should first have bath. Then you should say all these mantras. Then you should purify your kitchen and your vessels like this. And he told her all that. Now she said, okay, I never knew all these years. I was just doing like this. So then next day, what she did, she started doing all this. Now Jagannath came and he was waiting. Ma, please give me the khichdi, he said. She said, no, no, I'm still doing this. I'm still, please wait, please wait. And it got very late that day. And then he had to finish quickly with her and he had to rush back to the temple. So then he told her that, see, I don't want all this. It is your bhava which is important for me. I'm not bothered about whether your kitchen is clean or not and all that. You have to just make the khichdi and offer it to me like you were doing all these days. So then she started making the same thing. And one fine day, what happened was the priest entered the temple and he saw Jagannath in tears. So then he asked, what happened, oh Lord? So Jagannath says that my karma bai, my ma has passed away. Who will give me khichdi from now onwards? That's why I'm crying, he said. And then that is why in that temple, even today, the first item which is offered before, all the other parts of that Chapan Bhog, the first part that is offered is this Karma Bai ki Khichdi. So that shows us what is the importance of the bhava. Now, please, again, here I am telling very specifically, let us not think that we are like Karma Bai. For me, I have to follow because I am definitely not at the level of Karma Bhai. I have to make sure that I have my bath. I have to make sure that I'm chanting the mantras. I have to make sure that my kitchen and vessels and everything is purified and clean. And only in that state I will do it. But why we need this story is to tell us that it is important to have the right bhava when we are doing whatever we are doing. So let us not imitate Karma Bhai's action. Let us emulate the bhava that she had. So whatever we do, offer it to the Lord, and only what is left after that we have to consume. Let us see if we can try and adopt this practical aspect in our sadhana. So we are run out of time, less than a minute left. Let us offer gratitude, Kritagnyata, at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru for inspiring us to start and join this satsang. And let us pray for their blessings and grace to always be on us. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. If you have any questions about whatever we discussed today, please send them in WhatsApp. We will take them up some other time. Thank you for joining, and we will stop here for now. Namaskar.